I know people who use InDesign as their main word processor. I mean, they just put away Microsoft Word entirely. While that seems a bit extreme to me, I mean, if you need an alternate word processor that works well with InDesign, you should probably be using Adobe's InCopy software. And I'm going to talk about that software more in a later chapter. But all that said, InDesign does let you type and edit text relatively efficiently. Let me show you what I mean. I have my JavaCo magazine file open from my Chapter 6 exercise files. I'm going to go to page 2 by clicking on this button down in the lower left corner. And then I'll zoom in to 200%, just so we can see the text a little bit more easily. The first thing you should know about editing text in InDesign is if you have the selection tool or the direct selection tool selected, you can just double-click on any text frame and it will convert to the type tool and select exactly where you clicked. It's just a nice, helpful, easy shortcut for getting the type tool. Now I can double-click again to select this word, I can triple-click to select a whole line, or I can quadruple-click, click 4 times in a row, if you can manage that, to select an entire paragraph. Of course, you can always simply click and start typing, and type right inside of any frame if there's a flashing cursor. You can select over text with the mouse, of course, and you can also use the other keyboard shortcuts for moving around your text, like the left arrow moves one character at a time, and the command left arrow moves one word to the left at a time, and the same thing with the right arrow, command left arrow for Mac, control left arrow on Windows. That lets you move around your text quite easily. These are the same keyboard shortcuts as Microsoft Word, so if you're used to that, it seems to work just the same here in InDesign. Command up arrow on the Mac, control up arrow in Windows moves to the beginning of the paragraph, and command down arrow or control down arrow on Windows moves to the next paragraph. Now, this is the thing that I find most useful, is if you add the Shift key with any of those keyboard shortcuts, it selects from where the cursor is to where you're going. For example, if I type Command Shift down arrow or Control Shift down arrow on Windows, it selects from that point to the next paragraph. In other words, it selects this entire paragraph. If I do it again, it selects the next paragraph. So when you get those kinds of keyboard shortcuts into your hands, you can really navigate through and select text and edit it very quickly. Editing text right on the document page is acceptable, but it's not always very efficient. And later in this chapter, we're going to learn about the story editor feature, which often makes editing text much, much simpler. Sometimes you need some dummy text to fill a frame just to complete a mock-up of your design. And traditionally, designers have typed some Latin text called lorem ipsum to stand in position for text that they might not have yet. Now, if you need some placeholder text like this, you'll be pleased to hear that InDesign can type all of this for you. All you need to do is select the type tool and click on the frame that you want to fill. Then, from the type menu, choose Fill with Placeholder Text. It's as simple as that. I'll zoom in here so you can see the text. I typed Command 2 to go to 200% or Control 2 on Windows. This text is Latin, it's completely random, it's based on the same as the lorem ipsum type of text. Let me zoom back to fit in window with Command 0 or Control 0 on Windows, and I'll scroll over with Option spacebar or Alt spacebar to this next page. I have more text frames here, 3 text frames and 3 columns, and I want to fill that as well. So I simply click on here, but you know, this time I don't really want Latin text. I don't know, it's not jiving with me for some reason or another, so I could use a different kind of placeholder text. Let me show you a little trick. I'm going to switch back to the Finder or Windows Explorer, and I'm going to move a text file called placeholder text from my exercise files folder into my InDesign folder. The InDesign file is wherever you have the application installed. On the Mac, it's probably in your Applications folder. On Windows, it's probably in your Program files. Now when I switch back to InDesign and place the cursor in the first text frame, I choose Type, Fill with Placeholder Text, and a whole different type of text comes in. Let me zoom in here so you can see. This is just some random text. I actually have no idea what language it's in, but I do know that it's not Latin, and that was the effect I was trying to go for. The trick here is that any text file, as long as it's called placeholder.txt, and there's no formatting in it, that you put inside your InDesign folder, will show up when you choose Fill with Placeholder Text. Doesn't matter what it is, it just doesn't use the Latin anymore. So maybe that'd be useful for you to know sometime. But I have to warn you that there is a very important rule when you use placeholder text like this. Don't forget to replace it with the final text, the real text later. Unless you think that this is better than what the copy editor wrote, of course. In that case, it's your responsibility. What's the keyboard shortcut to type the registered trademark symbol? Or how about an M dash? If you don't use these characters very often, there's no reason to clutter your head with trying to remember the shortcuts all the time. Besides, InDesign has two features that make inserting these special characters a breeze. The first one is called Insert Special Character. First, I'm going to double-click on this text frame to switch to the Type tool, and then I'm going to go to the Type menu and choose Insert Special Character. In this case, I'll go to Symbols, Registered Trademark Symbol. There it is. Select that, and it places the character right where the cursor was flashing. I'm going to replace this white space character with a smaller space just to make it look a little bit cleaner. Now in this case, I'm not going to go to the Type menu. I'm simply going to click anywhere on my page. As long as that text cursor is flashing in the text, I can right mouse button click anywhere on my page, or on the Macintosh with a one button mouse, you control click, and I choose the same menu item, Insert Special Character. There's symbols, there's markers like the current page number, all kinds of wacky things are stuck inside these menus. In this case, I want to go to the Insert White Space menu and choose, let's say, a thin space. It's just a smaller, thinner space to fit in between those words. Okay, there's a second way to find special characters. I'm going to select this L character, and I'm going to go to the Type menu and choose Glyphs. The Glyphs panel shows me every character inside my font. In this case, I've selected this particular font, Adobe Caslon Pro, so it shows me all the characters inside that font. And if we scroll through the font, you'll see there are all kinds of options in here. There's ornaments, there's special ligatures, it just goes on and on and on. Some fonts have Cyrillic, some fonts have Greek. It's a wide variety. This font has fractions built into it. Now you can organize your Glyphs panel by choosing just what you want to show from the Show pop-up menu. In this case, I'm just going to choose Alternates for selection. And I see the various characters that are alternates for the capital letter L. I want this swash character, the swash L, and so to insert that L in place of the L that's on the page, I simply double-click on this in the Glyphs panel. Adding special characters is as simple as that. Now, not all fonts have all these characters in them. This particular font, Adobe Caslon Pro, has lots of special characters in it. But check out the fonts you're using and see what kind of treasures are hiding in there. Hey, in an earlier movie I mentioned the place command as a way to import text into InDesign. Now in the next movie, I'm going to dive deeper into this, helping make the import process as painless as possible. Okay, you have some text file, maybe a Microsoft Word document, and you need to get it into InDesign. Now there are two basic methods for importing text. The first one is the place command, which we saw a little bit in an earlier movie, but let me show you again. I'm going to jump to page 5 by using a keyboard shortcut, Command-J on the Mac or Control-J on Windows, then I just type 5 and hit Enter. Now I'm looking at page 5, and I see that there are 3 columns, and in each column there is an empty frame. These frames are actually threaded together, meaning that when I import the text will flow from one frame to the next. We cover how to thread frames in the next movie, but for right now I simply want to import the text in there. So I'm going to go to the File menu and choose Place. I'll choose Type of T from the Exercise Files folder, and I'll click Open. Notice that InDesign changes the cursor. This cursor means that when I click on this empty frame, the text will flow into it. If I move it over here, the cursor changes to a sharp angle. That means it's going to create a new frame and place the text into it. In this case, I want to place it into this frame. I'll click, and the text will flow in. Now I'm going to jump to a different page and show you the same import technique, but with a little twist. We'll jump to page 10 using the same keyboard shortcut, Command-J or Control-J. I'll type 10 and OK. Now I'm looking at an empty page, except I have columns. There are no empty frames on this page at all. But I'll use the same technique to choose Place from the File menu. In this case, I'm going to choose 2 different files and import both of them. I'll choose the first one, and then I'll shift-click on the second one. This tells InDesign that I want to import both of those. I click Open, and note that the cursor now has a little 2 next to it. That means there are 2 different files loaded in this cursor. Plus, I see a little preview of the text that's going to be imported. If I press the down arrow key on the keyboard, it switches to the second story, and I can see this is the one that I want to import first. I'll move the cursor up to the upper left corner, and you'll see that the cursor changes very slightly, so that's a hollow arrow. That means that when I place this, it's going to create a new frame and snap to the margin guides. It automatically builds a text frame that's the size of the column and imports the text. And finally, it reloads the place cursor with the next story. If I change my mind, I decide I don't really want that one, I could choose any other tool or just hit the escape key on my keyboard. That cancels out the place command. Now this looks great except for one problem. It only loaded a little bit of the story. The story is much longer than this. It only loaded one column. So I'm going to delete that and place it yet one more time with a twist. File, Place, choose the file I want to import, and click Open. But now, instead of just clicking, I'm going to hold down the Shift key. And when you hold down the Shift key, the cursor changes yet again. Always keep your eye on that cursor because it tells you what's going to happen. This cursor means it's going to load all the text of the story, automatically creating frames and even creating more pages as it goes until the entire story is imported. I'll click up here, and you'll see that it imports the entire story, even adding this extra page over here so that the story fits. One thing I should point out is if you're importing a document that has paragraph styles or character styles, one thing I should point out is if you're importing a Word document that has been styled in a certain way, that is, paragraph and character styles have been applied. Now, I'm going to be talking about paragraph styles and character styles in a later chapter, but I do want to point out now that if your original Word document has styles in it, paragraph styles or character styles, when you import that document, those styles will come with it. And in fact, if your Word document uses the same names as your InDesign has styles, exactly the same naming, then InDesign will throw away the definition of the Word document and use the definition of the InDesign document. That's typically what you want, so that's extremely helpful to make sure that you have the same names in your Word documents and your InDesign documents. Okay, here's another way that you can import a text file into InDesign without using the place command. You can import it by dragging and dropping. You just drag and drop the file, one or more files, right into your InDesign page. In this case, I'm going to drag and drop from Bridge, so I'll click on the Bridge button, and it launches Bridge and it shows me all the files in this folder. I'm going to select this types of T file, and I'm going to drag it into InDesign by dragging a little bit, and then I use my application switcher, Command-Tab on the Mac or Alt-Tab on Windows, and now I'll just let go of it over here on the pasteboard. InDesign creates a text frame, places the text into it automatically, and I'm good to go. This drag and drop functionality is extremely useful, and it's not just from Bridge. You can drag a file directly out of Windows Explorer or the Macintosh Finder, drag it right into InDesign, and all the text comes in. There is one other method for getting text into InDesign that some people use, and that's copy and paste from some other program. And while this usually works just fine, I really don't recommend it for anything more than a paragraph or two. I certainly wouldn't use copy and paste for any text that was formatted or included foreign languages or special characters. I've just seen too many problems over the years with text showing up, well, just wrong, somehow wrong after pasting it. So the place command is much more reliable when you're trying to get text into InDesign. Okay, here's the text in this frame over here. But why does the text end in the middle of the sentence? And what's this little red plus over in the corner? That's what we're going to cover in the next movie.